Hello everyone, welcome back to The Media Couple. I'm Rory and I am here with...
Sophie. Hello, that is me.
We're back again.
We're back.
Now, straight off at the top, we want to both just apologise for the delay in getting this podcast out. Life has just been extremely busy this past week and
Life just got in the way.
It got in the way. It got in the way of the pod, but no longer. No longer.
We're here and we're ready.
We're staying.
And we've got a great episode coming up for you.
We have. We're really excited about this one.
I feel like this might be our best ever.
That's bold.
Is that bold?
That is bold.
That is bold.
But, it's good to be bold.
Say bold one more time.
Not unless you're me, an older man, maturing, going bold.
Yeah, bold or bold? That's the key distinction
There's
here.
a distinction.
Anyways. Oh.
Go on, Toby.
Anyways, on the agenda today, God, we've been out of practice. It's like we've given 3 days overdue and now we're both like, oh, how does this, is a microphone? There's a camera? Like, what do we do? How does this work?
Yeah.
No, anyways, we've got some good stuff on the agenda today.
Yes.
We are going to be talking about Sam Mendes and the announcement that he is making a set of Beatles films.
Yeah, really exciting.
Which will be really interesting. Then we are going to be talking about the infamous film Rust. The trailer for that has just been released, which is the Alec Baldwin film. And finally, we're going to be talking about the BBC.
The Beebs.
All things Beebs.
Yeah.
So that's on the agenda today. And then if we have time, we'll go to a Rotten Tomatoes game. Which is going to be... You guys
love the Rotten Tomatoes game.
You're going to have to stick around to find out what the topic is.
Yeah.
It's a good one, though. It's a good one.
See, I don't know it. I'm excited.
So anyways, to kick it off, I wanted to talk about the Sam Mendes Beatles film. So he is making he's just announced he's making a Beatles series, I suppose you could call it. It's a series of films. So it's not television series. Right? It is 4 films, one about each of the members, and all 4 films will be released in April 2028. But here's the kicker, right? Which I think is actually genius. It's essentially going to be the first bingeable theatric experience.
Right.
So all 4 films, we're not too sure about when exactly they're going to come out, but the assumption is it's either going to be released all in the same week, but like Monday is film 1, Tuesday is film 2.
Okay.
That kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it's essentially to get people to get back into the theatre, into the cinema.
Right.
And it's sort of looking at this model where people like to binge watch stuff on TV.
So this is the big studio's answers.
Yeah, but
Gotcha.
I think it's quite a clever idea, not going to lie.
Don't get me wrong, it's cool. That's a lot of time going to the cinema though.
Yeah, but the only way you're going to be able to watch these films is in the cinema.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
true. It's quite bold, isn't it? By the studio behind it.
And can you imagine how much this is going to cost? 4 films. 4, not just one Sam Mendes film.
No, 4 Sam Mendes films.
Sam Mendes films. Anyway, so the actors who have been cast to play, obviously, John, Paul, George and Ringo are... Who could? What?
Obviously, those are the Beatles.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Obviously. So Paul Mescal is playing shocker Paul McCartney.
Oh.
Yep. Paul is playing Paul.
Paul.
Joseph Quinn is playing George Harrison.
Yeah.
Barry Keoghan.
Keegan.
Yep. He is playing Ringo Starr.
Cool. Yeah. Love that.
And Harris Dickinson is playing John Lennon, the late, great John Lennon.
Well, to be fair, you already have to give it like hats off to Sam Mendes and the casting directors and producers because they've basically gone and got the 4 big Hollywood sort of young male actors, haven't they?
I mean, I would say that these 4 are basically the 4 who are in the running to play Bond as well, which is really interesting that they're now playing these Beatles, characters because does that mean
they
likely won't be playing Bond?
They probably can't be.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that already in itself, like 4 films is a huge commitment.
Well, it's one film. Well, no, but I suppose they'll all be in each one.
Well, they'll all appear, won't they? Probably across them.
Yeah, and apparently the shooting timeline for it, the shooting window is a year.
Oh, wow.
A year. So this takes them out. And think if it's coming out in 2028, realistically, it's probably going to be shooting... at the earliest next year.
Yeah.
I would say probably midway through 2026 to midway through 2027 is probably when it's going to be shooting.
Is it all 4 films are being produced in 1 year?
Well, they're filming all 4 films.
Yeah, so back to back.
Well, they're all part of the same story, but they're going to be separated from my understanding.
Okay.
But I think, I just think it's very interesting. So it probably takes these 4 out of the running to be Bond.
Yeah.
Which then just goes back to my theory that Jack Lowden is going to play Bond.
See, this is it.
Right?
This is it.
Because if Joseph Quinn, Paul Mescal, Joseph Quinn, Barry Keoghan, and Harris Dickinson aren't playing Bond.
Yeah. Who's left?
Who's left? Jack Lowden. I'm right.
It's true.
I called it, guys.
It's true.
I called it.
I mean, yeah, you heard it here again. Yeah.
You heard it here second for the second time.
It is staying on the Beatles, another B as opposed to Bond. It is interesting. I mean, the casting is great, and I think I'd love to know a bit more about why those actors in particular were chosen to play like why was Paul chosen to play Paul McCartney? Like that type of thing. But it is interesting Hollywood's answer to trying to get people back in theaters.
Yeah.
And maybe this is I'm really excited to see if it will work. But I just feel like it's a huge commitment for anybody to be like, I've got to go to the cinema for the next 4 days in a row.
Well, I suppose you could call him commissioner, the studio head, the studio exec, who basically signed this off. He said this is starting to feel a little bit how that big famous James Cameron film felt.
Right.
Or Avatar. Where it just went ballistic, in terms of budget and schedule, and it was the biggest thing that they had ever done.
Yeah.
So I think it is definitely, they are feeling the nerves.
Yeah.
Because it is a huge gamble. I mean, making 4 films in one, each film's 200 million.
Yeah, easily. Yeah, especially nowadays,
a huge investment.
And as well, it's the gamble of not having it on a streaming platform nowadays.
Yeah,
not having it on a Netflix or a Paramount Plus or a Disney. Not having it on one of those big platforms is a gamble, because you're basically like, right, all of our revenue is going to have to be made back from theatre release.
Exactly. But I think you look at what happened with the Barbie and Oppenheimer, and that was, Barbenheimer. I think studio execs now are probably trying to replicate that kind of thing. Yeah. Wicked and
because they did so well theatrically.
Exactly. Yeah. And those kinds of films are the films that get people back in the theatre. So you make 4 films
about the Beatles.
But then what I do wonder, is there going to be one film that people will be like, I don't want to watch that?
Right. Oh, about a particular band member. Right.
Is it going to be like the most famous band members are the ones who get the bigger audience? Yeah.
Yeah. Because I guess they all kind of went off in their own direction. And I guess Paul McCartney, he had such a big solo career. Are there people who prefer Paul over the others, or just Paul fans?
Yeah.
Not necessarily the Beatles fans.
I think the other really important thing that we haven't actually touched upon with this either is obviously this Beatles film that Sam Mendes is making is the first time a narrative feature film has been granted the music rights to the Beatles catalogue.
Oh, wow.
Now, when it comes to clearing music, this is going to be a very short, brief, not very long.
Let's keep it short.
A very brief sort of lesson, shall we say.
Yeah.
Beatles music is basically impossible. That's why you never see it in TV shows, in films, because to clear it for the rights, it's just, you might as well not touch it. No one can get the rights to that music.
So protected, yeah.
No one can get the rights to that music. So the fact that Sam Mendes has managed to get the rights to this music, oh my God, it must have cost a fortune just in the music rights alone.
And taken a good amount of time to convince the relevant parties that to let me have it. Yeah.
So it's just everything coming together. This particular set of film, I think, is really going to be something to watch, because you've got they're trying to change things up with the theatrical experience. You've got the music rights, the clearing the Beatles music. I mean, does it get much bigger than the Beatles?
You've also got a huge film about the most famous band that's ever lived.
Yeah, and then these 4 huge stars who are playing in it. This is just I'm really, really excited to watch this.
And as well, you have to admit, they have got a solid director on board. I mean, if anyone can take it on, I think Sam Mendes can do it. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he did Harry Potter, didn't he?
No, he did Skyfall.
Why do I always think it's Alfonso Cuarón who did Azkaban? I always think it was Sam Mendes. It wasn't.
Yeah.
Anyways,
now you know.
Now you know.
He also did 1917, which we brushed on, didn't we? We talked about that a few episodes ago, about the one take.
I still think 1917 is up there with one of my favourite films.
It's definitely one of the best war films, I think, ever.
It is really,
it's
really good.
It's a solid film. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
But anyway, so that is Sam Mendes, the Beatles. Then moving on, the trailer for Rust has just been released.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's a tricky one to discuss.
Yeah. So this is the Alec Baldwin film that was in the press last year because a live round was discharged on set and ended up killing the cinematographer Helena Hutchins.
Yeah.
She died essentially after the live round went into her. She was just behind the camera.
Yeah.
It's a big court case.
Yeah.
All of that kind of stuff.
Kind of just completely took over everything, didn't it? You know?
Yeah. I mean, to be completely honest, the fact that it happened in the first place should never have happened.
No.
It was really clearly an unsafe set. And
well, that's the case of where that is a genuine case study of, okay, the production budget was removed to the point where they didn't have a professional armorer on set who was properly qualified to handle that weapon and ensure its safety.
Yeah. But I also think we have to bear in mind that, you know, we have both worked on sets before and, you know, it can get to a point where sometimes health and safety is overlooked because it's like, come on, we've got to be quick, we've got to be fast because we're spending money.
Yeah.
You know, and when you've got a producer who is also the main actor and sort of the guy who's in charge, I think this is still on Alec Baldwin's head. That's my opinion.
Okay.
He was a producer. As a producer, you are ultimately responsible for health and safety. The fact that he has not been prosecuted further, I don't think is fair.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the armourer, who shouldn't have been hired in the first place, and clearly due diligence wasn't done when they're hiring her.
Yeah, it was just way too junior. Yeah.
But ultimately, the producer is in charge.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you're getting paid the big bucks, you need to take the big responsibility. And he's not taken the responsibility.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion on that, and nothing is going to change my mind there. But what I wanted to talk about with this is what they've done with Rust. So the credits begin with a title card for Helena.
Okay.
And then they go to, what can we do to make this better?
Right. Okay.
So it's a quote, apparently, that Helena used to say all the time.
What can we do to make this better?
And they've essentially tried to make this film a tribute to Helena. And I don't doubt that the creators have, you know, worked really hard to try and tribute Helena, and I think the family are on board with it. There is something that feels a little bit icky to me about it in the film that, you know, that ultimately killed her.
Yeah.
To say, what can we do to make this better? And then not take responsibility for your role as a producer.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, what we can do to make this better is you stand up and take accountability for the fact that the set was unsafe and you were on that set.
Yeah.
And you were a producer in charge.
Absolutely. It's kind of like I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'm surprised the film even has been released. I'm surprised it even got to that point.
Yeah.
What with all the negative press about it. I mean, I couldn't imagine what it was like cutting that film together in post and actually looking through those rushes and seeing what you actually had after that. So I actually am surprised the film's even gotten to this point where it's getting released.
Yeah.
And then I do understand where you're coming from. It's kind of like it's a really like I don't really quite know how I feel about it. It's like you're saying this film is for her, but it ultimately killed her because of unsafe unsafe working practices. And these,
why
you know,
is it being released? Because I mean, let's be honest.
I kind of just
It should have just died.
I think so. Yeah, I think the film should have just like been one of those things of. Because it'll be a case study in years to come. It'll be like, this is why...
It is a case study.
Well, I know, but it'll be the fame of what happened on the set will grow to the point where everyone in our industry talks about it, and we're always reminded about this is why we take the precautions we do, because things like this happen, okay?
Well, to be completely honest, in the UK, that wouldn't have happened. We have much, much more robust firearm, you know, practices
sort of regulations
and safety in place than they do in the United States. And you know, the fact that this happened in the first place, the number of safety protocols that would have had to have been entirely removed from the process. It wasn't just like they forgot one. Like, live rounds should never have been on the set.
No.
Right? The live rounds shouldn't have been on the set. The armorer should have been the only person handling the weapon. It should have been checked by the first AD. Like, there's just so many steps in that would have been put in place by a proper risk assessment.
But they were being pushed for time. That's the biggest thing here.
Exactly.
Right? It's like, I think that's the thing people forget sometimes about the regulations and stuff when we are creating films are there to keep everybody safe, because things like this, unfortunately, do happen. And like, we get it, you know, like, it's when you're busy on set and you're stressed, you're like, we need to rush, we need to get the shot. But bad things can happen. And it's one of those things, isn't it? You never expect it to happen on your production until it does.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think this is a good example of how, you know, an unregulated industry such as ours actually has real world consequences.
Absolutely.
You know, we're making make believe essentially, but if you don't adhere to proper health and safety,
make believe becomes,
what are you doing?
You know, reality.
Yeah. But also, like, just grow up.
Yeah.
Like, grow up.
Yeah.
Like, these are people's lives.
Yeah.
It's not good enough that you want your film made quicker for cheaper.
No.
I'm quite fed up of that kind of attitude. And that is very prevalent in our industry. So those are my 4 cents.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it'd be interesting to see, like, you know, when what the sort of feedback is when it is out.
Yeah, well, I don't think, from what I've seen, it's been quite mixed. I think her mother, Helena's mother, is being represented by Gloria Allred.
Oh, right.
And they are not pleased with the fact that this film has gone out. And however, her late husband, well, her widower, is now has been working with them and is happy for this to go out.
Okay.
So I think there's a little bit of back and forth between them. But, you know, that's their, you know, prerogative. They are the family. They know her.
Yeah, it's their decision, yeah.
I want to look at this more from a perspective of health and safety and how, you know, it just, I don't know, there's just something that doesn't sit right with the fact that you're putting out this film which is going to make a profit.
I agree, yeah. You're profiting off the back of a very tragic loss, which shouldn't have happened. Shouldn't happen.
Because you were thinking about the bottom line.
Exactly, yeah.
Anyways,
yes.
I know that was quite heavy. We are also now moving on to the BBC license fee.
Yeah, what's going on at the Beebs now?
Well, the license fee has increased by £5 this April. So I thought it would just be interesting to talk about it, because I think there's 2 ways to look at this, right? There's the obvious way, which is, what are we doing paying the BBC a license fee? Because,
well, as we have done since basically it began, like a very long time, haven't we?
But in this day and age, does it make sense anymore to pay the license fee to the BBC when, you know, we've got the likes of ITV, Channel 4, you know, who are all ad funded.
Yeah.
You've got Netflix and Paramount Plus and Disney Plus, who are subscription services.
Yeah, yeah.
Why are we funding a national broadcaster?
Yeah.
When there's argument as well that they are not impartial.
Yeah, okay.
And the other side of the argument is they are impartial.
Yes.
And we need a national broadcaster. And it is considerably, you know, important to our culture. It's a signifier of our soft power.
Yeah.
And is important to have. So there's 2 sides to the argument. I thought it'd be interesting for you and I to talk about it. What are your thoughts?
I'm kind of on the side of, look, as the consumer, you know, obviously I pay a TV license, we pay it in our house. And the thought of it going up by £5 is kind of like, oh, great, another bill increasing.
In a cost of living crisis.
Cost of living crisis that we're in, where, you know, everything around us is going up, but I don't necessarily feel like I'm getting more value, right? I'm not getting more value, so I'm not exactly happy to pay more, but I just have to because I need to, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of one of those things. It's like with the BBC, it's, you know, it's a historic network. Like you say, it's in sort of the public interest for us. That's why we fund it. They use that money to fund various parts of their sort of productions and their news and stuff like that.
And radio. Which people always forget. Radio is funded by the license fee. And how many people who are like, I don't watch live TV, but you listen to radio.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I'd say is, from a production standpoint, from like a creative perspective, I do think the BBC produced some brilliant shows.
Yeah.
And I think over the years, there are people who have worked for the BBC who you go like, oh, wow, like Luther, right? Like those detective sort of dramas and stuff like that. Really well written, you know, Peaky Blinders, shows like that, where you're like, this is why. This is because it can produce great shows that do really well. Like Boiling Point as well, right? It did the series after the film. And the other side of it is like, okay, we pay the license fee because that gets given to those creative departments that allows them to still continue. The argument I have where I'm kind of like, oh, if it got taken away, am I going to watch, 1,000 more people's jobs of people who are my colleagues and my work partners disappear?
Yeah.
Which is hard because I'm like, I don't want anyone else in film and TV losing their jobs. So it is kind of that thing where I'm like, but if we don't support it, that's what will happen. Those departments will get smaller and smaller until they aren't there anymore.
And I think that's the thing is people go, okay, but then why don't we switch to an ad model? Mm-hmm. And here is my reasoning as to why I don't think that would work, right? We've already got broadcasters, national broadcasters who are ad funded.
Yeah.
Right, not that, but you know what I mean. ITV, ad funded, Channel 4, ad funded.
Yeah.
If we then say we're not paying the BBC, scrap the BBC license fee, they're moving to an ad-funded series. There's only a finite number of advertisers and there's a finite amount of money that is in the ad space for television at the moment.
I guess there's a finite amount of time as well, right?
Yeah. But the money is currently split between the ad-funded broadcasters that we have. You then add the BBC in, that money is then going to be diluted even more.
Yeah.
The ad-funded broadcasters that we currently have are struggling as it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You dilute that ad money even more, they will go under.
Yeah.
Right? So we will lose. We will lose more of our broadcasters. Channel 4, ITV, and then BBC will then become beholden to the advertisers.
Yeah.
Right? Which means it will be able to be less impartial because if the advertiser doesn't want this, the advertiser gets what they want.
Because they're paying.
So then it's like, okay, well, let's go to a funded by our tax, by the government.
Yeah.
Okay, but then that opens up the BBC to be politically motivated.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So then it will be even less impartial
Yeah.
than it already claims it is.
Well, what if it went to a subscription-based model like Netflix or Amazon, where it was like, okay, you pay us $5.99 a month, and you watch our content.
Yeah, okay, we could do that, but then what happens to all the live TV channels?
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Right? So those just become, how do they pay for those things?
And the news, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, how do they pay for those things? We say, well, you pay with the subscription. There won't be enough people who are going to pay for that subscription to have the level and quality that we require. The BBC is already struggling to pay and fund programs, right? They are having to go in getting funding from multiple different sources. The BBC doesn't fully fund programs anymore.
Yeah. Do you know what's really interesting? Just to touch on that briefly, a few episodes ago, we were talking about adolescence. And it's so interesting because you look at the type of show Adolescence is, and it had BBC written all over it.
Yeah.
10 years ago, that show would have been produced by the BBC.
Absolutely.
They would have gone there and they would have produced it. They don't have the money to fund a show like that anymore, which is why it's going to Netflix.
Exactly.
Netflix are now the people who can fund that type of content. But man, it screamed a BBC show.
Exactly. And you've got to look at this way as well. The BBC is a British broadcasting company, right?
Yep.
It is culturally British. We can't really export the BBC as a subscription service overseas.
Abroad, no. Doesn't
Netflix
work.
Can.
Yeah.
Disney Plus can.
Yeah.
They are meant to be more global. Yes, they are American companies, but they have set themselves up to be more global. The BBC is culturally British.
Yes.
So the subscription model, we wouldn't have enough people in this country if every single person, went and took out a subscription with the BBC. It probably still wouldn't fund the BBC. Don't quote me on that. I haven't done the math on it. Okay, but my point being, it's not a global brand.
Because
it's
you can't sell it sort of abroad sort of thing because it's so aligned to British culture.
And if we did go down a subscription route, we would then end up losing a lot of what makes the BBC shows so British.
Yeah.
Right, because they would have to be from a more world and international perspective, which would mean we would lose what's culturally British
to us. I think as well it's an interesting one because it's a provider of news, right?
Yes.
A lot of people depend on that. you know,
Absolutely.
to get their news and stuff like that. And that's something that, like, you know, like a Netflix and a Disney and those type of big corporations, they're not going to, like, they don't want to buy the news.
No.
Because
the news is expensive and doesn't bring in much money.
Exactly.
But the news.
But it's required.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But a lot of these streamers don't want to have to deal with news.
No, they'll buy the creative departments, you know, and take the talent for sure.
That's where the profit is.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Well,
was
not for much. Yeah, not for much longer, unfortunately.
No, exactly.
But yeah, no, I understand. I mean, it's a tricky one because as the consumer of the BBC's product, and you know that I pay a direct debit for them every month. The thought of it going up is hard. But then there's another part of me where I'm like, I don't want to watch any more of my colleagues lose their jobs.
No,
any more of my peers, you know.
Exactly. And I think what people forget is that the BBC has such an impact on our content and what we watch as a nation.
Yeah.
You take that away and it would really dilute our culture.
Yeah. Essentially.
The BBC is the most prestigious broadcaster of them all.
Yeah.
Right? It is. You can't even.
I'm pretty sure it's one of the oldest of even globally.
You can't even make a show for the BBC unless you've made a show for one of the other broadcasters.
Yeah.
As a production company, right? You have to be vetted prior to even being potentially allowed to pitch to the BBC.
Yeah.
Because they're not just going to take anybody off the street, right?
No.
You have to prove your worth just to get in the door, and it basically ensures that the content that they create is really high quality.
Yeah.
We lose that and we lose a huge part of our broadcasting culture. And I think as much as it sounds like, well, I don't want to pay another subscription or I don't want to pay another fee. Yeah, I get that. But you don't have to pay for Netflix. You don't have to, but you're choosing to pay for those because, well, there's better shows on that. And it's because we're not funding our BBC correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the other perspective is I'm sure that there are other sort of inner workings at the BBC that we're not familiar with. There is obviously a corporate side that we don't see and a numbers side that we're not necessarily seeing. So maybe internally the money's not being divvied up
totally.
correctly.
And listen, there's always going to be, there's always going to be something wrong. There's always going to be something that can be improved. I mean, we're not a perfect society. We don't live in a perfect utopian world. Of course there are issues, not denying that, there are. But I think just to cut it out entirely and to say, well, I don't want to pay it anymore. I just don't think it's helpful because it would be taking away such a huge part of our culture. And I just think that is more than ever really important.
Yeah. I think it would be I agree with you. I think it would be extremely sad to see the BBC go.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Anyways, so on that note, we have got the Rotten Tomatoes game.
Yes. Been gearing up for this. I'm so ready.
So the Rotten Tomatoes game, for those of you who have been living under a rock, basically I tell Rory a title of a film. He tells me what he thinks the critic score was. I tell him if he's right or wrong. Ooh,
if he's right or wrong.
We then discuss the film. We move on. That's the game. Pretty simple. So this week's topic is Marvel films.
Yes.
Thought you'd like this one.
I do like this. Yeah.
And the Marvel film to end all Marvel films, of course, Avengers Endgame.
Oh, I can imagine critically 70, audience 83.
Okay, critically 94%.
That is so high.
Yep.
Wow, did not see that coming at all.
Audience score 90%.
90%, yeah.
I remember watching this film in the cinema.
You cried.
Well, I cried, but yeah, of course I cried. I cried everything. I mean, duh.
That's very normal, to be fair.
No, but I remember watching this in the cinema, and I remember it was one of those moments where it was like everybody was like, "Oh my goodness! Oh wow! No!" Like it was so animated in that cinema. It was such a great environment to be in. Everybody.
That was when Marvel films were good.
It was packed.
Yeah.
But yes,
that's a great film.
It was a great film. I wish I could watch that film again, having never seen it.
Yeah.
That was such a like, What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know what you mean.
Go watch it if you haven't seen it. Anyways, next one, Iron Man 3.
Iron Man 3, relatively low. I'm going for this one. 48% critic score. With the people, 60.
Okay, 79% critically.
Oh, wow. Okay, quite high.
The audience score, 78%.
Okay.
Pretty bang on.
That is pretty even.
Yeah.
I wasn't a huge fan of Iron Man 3.
Yeah, you didn't. I quite liked Iron Man 3.
The first Iron Man is the best Iron Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the best one.
But
Love
I
that
thought
one.
we had to, we've done Endgame.
Yeah, no, I get it.
So
I get it. You're doing the final sort of, the final films. No, I get it.
Well,
I mean, I just
kind
wasn't
of.
a huge fan of it. I don't know. I just didn't love the story as much, didn't love the villain as much. Yeah. No, I'd argue Iron Man 2 was better as well.
Interesting. Well, there we go. You heard it here
Come at me.
first. All right, this one because I just love Tom Holland and Zendaya. Spider-Man Homecoming.
Spider-Man Homecoming. Critically...
Zendaya was in that one, right? That's one Zendaya was in.
Yes.
Yeah. I was like, have I just completely messed that up and made that up in my head? No, I haven't.
Critically, 68%.
Okay.
Audience score, 75.
Okay, critically, 92%.
God, well off.
Audience score, 87%.
The critics love a
I know,
superhero
but it's
film.
because Tom Holland and Zendaya actually fell in love in that film and you can see it.
Right, that's why
And
they scored it so high.
I feel
What can I-
like
yeah.
that is why the critics are just suckers
They are,
for
yeah.
a romantic plot twist.
They are. They're suckers for a real life romance.
Exactly.
I mean, look, I get it. I get it. You know.
So am I. I think
know.
it's so cute.
Yeah.
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 Love it. Anyways, last one. Doctor Strange with
Doctor Strange.
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Benedict Cumberbatch. I'm going to go for 90%.
Okay.
Critic score. Audience 85.
Oh, Rory, you were so close. 89% critic score. Audience 86.
Oh.
You were 1% off on both of them.
both.
That was very close though. I love that film. I was surprised it didn't do better. I really enjoyed Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
I love Benedict Cumberbatch as well. So that, is probably why. I just think he really embodies Doctor Strange.
He does, doesn't he?
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, he was very, very good.
He's
good
like
casting.
mean, but not mean, but
Yeah.
like mysterious. And yeah, I just liked him in that film. That was a good one.
Well, look, Benedict, if you're watching, we think you're mysterious.
Mysterious and mean.
But in a good way.
In a good way. Yeah. Anyways,
Well, on that bombshell.
on that note,
Thank you so much for watching, as ever. We hope you've really enjoyed this episode. If we could please get you to like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a review. It massively helps us out. And as ever, thank you so much for your continued support, and we will see you all again on the next one.
see you next one. Thanks guys for being here. Bye.